I smiled for decades while carrying this in silence. Some mornings before the house fully wakes up, I catch my reflection in the hallway mirror. The smile is still there, faint but practiced, like a habit my face learned long before I understood why. It comes automatically even now, especially now. People think it means I'm content or that I've made peace with everything. I let them think that. It's easier than explaining how long a person can live while holding something carefully out of sight. I've had what most would call a good life. Steady work, a family that grew and scattered in healthy ways, years marked by routines that gave shape to time. I paid my bills. I showed up. I shook hands, kept promises, and learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. I was dependable. That was the word people used. Dependable men are trusted. Trusted men are rarely questioned. And so no one ever asked what I was carrying. When I was younger, I believed that if you kept moving, the weight would eventually lighten. Life had a way of demanding your attention, children needing rides, responsibilities piling up, decisions that couldn't be postponed. There was always something immediate, something practical, something that required my smile and my steadiness. I became very good at providing both. What I didn't realize then was that silence doesn't dissolve, it settles. It finds its place and stays. The truth I never told anyone wasn't dramatic. There was no single moment that could be pointed to as the cause of everything that followed. That's part of why it stayed hidden for so long. It was subtle, ordinary, even. The kind of truth that lives in pauses and choices, in what you don't say when the opportunity presents itself. I was offered a different life once. Not a better one, necessarily, just a truer one. It came quietly, without fanfare, disguised as a chance I could have taken without anyone blaming me. I remember sitting at the edge of a bed, shoes still on, holding a piece of paper that explained everything I would need to know. The room smelled like laundry soap. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. Life was going on, unaware that I was standing at a crossroads. I folded the paper carefully and put it away. At the time, I told myself I was being responsible, that I was choosing stability over uncertainty, that other people depended on me staying exactly where I was. Those things were not untrue, but they were not the whole truth either. What I didn't admit even to myself was how afraid I was of disappointing the version of me that others believed in. So I stayed. I smiled. I committed fully to the life I had chosen, and in doing so, quietly abandoned the one I hadn't. The years passed, as they always do. I became the person people expected. I learned how to nod at the right moments, how to offer encouragement without revealing too much of myself. There were days when the silence felt almost noble. I convinced myself that not everyone gets to live every version of their life, and that maturity meant accepting that without resentment. But silence is patient. It waits for you to slow down. There were moments when the weight surfaced unexpectedly. A song on the radio that stopped me mid-step. A conversation overheard in a grocery store aisle. A question from someone younger, asked casually, that landed harder than it should have. In those moments I felt the distance between who I was and who I might have been. And it took effort to keep smiling. I never told anyone because there was never a right time. Early on, it would have caused confusion. Later, it would have caused regret. Eventually, it felt like it would only bring pain without purpose. The longer I waited, the more the truth belonged only to me. It became part of my internal landscape, like a room no one else had keys to. I watched people around me make choices with a freedom I pretended not to envy. I encouraged them, genuinely. I wanted them to live fully, even if I hadn't. That was the strange contradiction of it all. I wasn't bitter. I was just quietly aware of what had been exchanged. Smiling became my way of managing that awareness. Not a fake smile, exactly. More like a controlled one. A reminder to myself that life, even when incomplete, could still be meaningful. That joy and regret were not opposites, but neighbors. As I grew older, the questions changed. People stopped asking what I wanted to be and started asking how I felt. I answered those questions just as carefully. I'm fine, I would say, and most of the time, I meant it. Fine is a flexible word. It leaves room for things you don't plan to explain. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying the moment I folded that paper. I didn't imagine alternative futures in detail. That felt indulgent. Instead, I focused on the single fact that a choice had been made, and that choices, once made, asked to be carried. I carried mine quietly. Now, in the later years, people assume reflection brings clarity. In some ways, it does. I understand myself better than I once did. I can see the fear that guided my decisions, the love that complicated them, the values that kept me anchored. I don't judge the younger version of myself harshly. He did the best he could with what he knew. What surprises me is how little the weight has changed. It hasn't grown heavier, but it hasn't disappeared either. It has simply become familiar, like an old ache you stop mentioning because it no longer feels remarkable. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had spoken sooner. Not to change anything, but to be seen more fully. But that wondering doesn't last long. I know myself well enough to know that I would have smiled then too, and told myself it was better this way. There is comfort in consistency, in being the same person people have always known. And yet there is a quiet loneliness in knowing that no one has ever seen all of you at once. I don't plan to tell anyone now, not because it's forbidden, but because it belongs to a different time. It shaped me, but it doesn't define me. It is simply a truth that existed alongside everything else, unnoticed but present. I've learned that a person can live a full life and still leave parts of themselves unexplored. That fulfillment doesn't require completeness, only honesty within oneself. I was honest enough to know what I was giving up, even if I never said it out loud. So I keep my smile, not as a mask, but as a quiet acknowledgement of what was chosen and what was not. And when the house grows still in the evening, and there is nothing left to perform or explain, I sit with the silence that has accompanied me all these years, and let it rest where it always has.